At one point, India and China were almost at the same track.
Yes, we can congratulate ourselves for what we have done, but China shows that we cannot be complacent. That's the difference. And why 1990, China's per capita income was $317 in nominal terms, US terms. Ours was 371. Prime Minister's vision of making us into a Viksit Bharat or a high-income economy comes into play, which is that we also must become that. And for doing that, we have to raise our rate of growth.
Decoding policies that have shaped the economy and bureaucracy has always been the focus for the Secretariat. And now we are ready to serve you that extra bit with TS Podcast Series. We will kickstart this series with the statecraft conversations with Dr JN Singh, former Gujarat Chief Secretary, and Dr Rajiv Kumar, eminent economist, Pahlé India Foundation Chairman, and who's also served as Vice Chairperson of the NITI Aayog.
Hi friends, I am JN Singh, an ex-civil servant, having served Government of Gujarat and Government of India in various positions, and finally retired as Chief Secretary of Gujarat. With me today is an eminent economist, Dr. Rajiv Kumar, who did his DPhil from Oxford, and after that, he has served in various positions in Government of India at various levels. He is, equally good, equally proficient. He served in various think tanks, again in India and abroad, and presently he is heading Pahlé India Foundation. The most prominently, he was Vice Chairman of NITI Aayog, the second Vice Chairman, almost full 5 years there. Rajiv ji, such a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Jain. Wonderful to be here.
Thank you. We'll like to start with India's economic position over a period of time. If you look at it, India, in the post-independence period, we had the Hindu, what we used to call the Hindu rate of growth. Then it was post-liberalization. India developed quite a bit post-liberalization period. Then 2007-8, in the early phase of Manmohan Singh government, there was quite a spurt in the growth, almost 8% it touched for quite a few years. And once now we have stabilized at around 6 to 7% we are doing, and consistently we are doing. How do you look at, even your overall span as such a foremost economist, prominent economist, how do you look at the post-independence period in India's economic situation?
Jain, India has been a remarkable country. And you talked about the economic growth that we have had, and we transitioned from the Hindu rate of growth to the post-liberalization rate of growth, which from 1990 to now, if you average it out, it's about 6.7%. Now, and that is a very creditable performance, looking at global comparison, etc. And therefore, we have now become the fourth largest economy in the world. We've got about $4.1 trillion in nominal terms, about $13 trillion in PPP terms. So in economics, I think we've done, now we can always have done better, but that's always the case, and we'll discuss that later on. But the fact is that I think we can congratulate ourselves for saying that, before 1990, our per capita income was about $300. And now it has become $2,800, almost 8 times. So that's 8x. So that's and our poverty. Just looking at the numbers here, now we actually defeated abject poverty. The multi-poverty dimensional index says that hardly anybody now lives in those kinds of poverty levels that we were used to. So therefore, we have now completed the promise that was made in 74 by Mrs. Gandhi about Gareebi Hatao. Gareebi hat gayi hai. But then for me, the more remarkable thing is that along with the economics growth and transition, we have also managed to handle our political and social transitions at the same time. I don't think of any other country in the world history actually, and I'm making a strong statement, which has taken these three transitions simultaneously. Political, we adopted the highest form of political, Republican democracy, constitutional democracy. Nobody gave us a chance. Winston Churchill said they'll come, finish it off. And you know that we have centuries of social hierarchies, stratification, and that also we have managed to change. After all, there was a Dalit lady who became the UP chief minister on 3 occasions. So
Correct.
that is the big social transition. So the 3 transitions simultaneously doing successfully and coming to this point, I think this is where we will claim to be, and it'll become even clearer otherwise, that we are probably an example for the other emerging economies as to how we can manage the 3 together in such a large continental size, diversified economy, which is more diversified than Europe. And we have managed to retain our sovereign unity as
Yes.
well. So that's what makes me, so amazingly claim India's performance since independence.
So that way, if you look at it, in the post-colonial period in the 1940s, 50s, 60s, when most of the Asian and African countries got independence, quite a large number of them reverted to military rule. Army was started ruling over there. Most of them, despite having good mineral bases, Nigeria, you take an example, many other countries, Venezuela is one of them, have regressed. I mean, they had done much better earlier, but they have regressed. And but whereas we have got a shining example of India.
But that is our credit worthiness. That is what goes to our credit. All our neighbors
Yes.
are in very different forms.
Yes.
Autarky, military dictatorships, etc., going forward, coming back, and things. And all over Africa, you've
Yeah,
seen what's
yeah,
going on.
exactly.
Latin America, the same situation, which is why I said. But more importantly, JN, which is that even in Europe, they first did the social transformation. Then they did the political transformation, Magna Carta and so on.
Correct.
And then the Industrial
Correct.
Revolution started.
Correct.
Even the US, if you remember, what did they do
Yes.
first? They first bumped off all the native Americans.
Yeah.
That is what
Yeah,
happened.
exactly.
And then they had the civil war within themselves. After completing that, then the US economic recovery began.
And the universal franchise there was quite late.
Much late, and the women got them only after the 1930s. Yeah.
Correct.
So, and final example, and same thing with Japan.
Yeah.
The emperor ruled Japan until the Second World War.
Yes.
And so, and even China.
Yeah.
Everybody will admit, and I admire China for all the different reasons, but there is not the political freedom that we have, given to our people since the day one. So therefore, the political transition is not over.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
So therefore, this is why I made that strong statement.
And
It goes to, by the way, to the talent of our political forefathers.
Yes.
And to the talent of our Indian people.
Yes.
That we have managed to make these 3 transitions.
And talking of the social transformation, another transformation that you said, we have had one of the first lady prime ministers anywhere in the world. We have had at least, I can recollect, 2 ladies as our president. And in so many important positions, the ladies, the people of the so-called oppressed classes
Absolutely.
have been there at the hem of the affairs.
And not once, more repeatedly.
Yes.
You see, and therefore, and for our society,
Correct.
characterized by Manu Smriti and all the caste divisions, etc., for us to do such strong positive discrimination, for that to happen, I think it's quite remarkable, and we don't give ourselves enough credit for it.
Correct.
And I think we should.
Yes.
That look, 6% plus growth for 35 years, along with the strengthening of democratic constitutional institutions and the upliftment, of the depressed classes. I think it's something that the world is looking at and will continue to look at.
Sir, you are an economist. I'll pull back you to economic question. You have mentioned China in context where the transformation took place quite substantially. So the great divergence between West and the East basically took place post-industrial revolution. Prior to that, India and China were having almost 45-50% of the GDP, of the global GDP. Then it started coming down, almost to 10-11%. Now, once again, it is coming up. And China is now the second, one can very well say, along with USA, and maybe it has surpassed USA in many conditions. At one point, India and China were almost at the same track. Sir, what happened? while we have progress, we have got full rights to be comfortable about it, to be proud about it. But our neighbor has sort of gone ahead comparatively, relatively speaking.
Yeah.
How do you look at it?
Now, very good, Jane. I mean, and you pointed out very well that before 1850, India and China together had something like 45% of the world economy. And by the time the Britishers left us, we were reduced to 3%.
Correct.
And from a prosperous country called Sone ki Chidiya,
Correct.
we were a country left by them which were full of famines and lack of education, literacy, etc. And same thing with China. They forced them to buy opium.
Yes.
The opium
Yes.
war. But now the China has recovered. But the comparison with China that you so nicely bring out, my bottom line, and I'll get into detail, is that yes, we can congratulate ourselves for what we have done, but China shows that we cannot be complacent.
Yes. That's the point, sir.
That's the difference. And why 1990, China's per capita income was $317 in nominal terms, US terms. Ours was 371.
Yeah.
And look at what has happened since then. Our per capita income, we can congratulate ourselves, has come to nearly 3,000, 2,800 and things. And China's economy is more now, bigger in PPP terms than the US.
Yeah, exactly. That's
Their
what
share is now 19. So therefore, China has shown that we could have done much better. You see, they grew at 10% between 1990 to 2020, 3 decades.
Yes.
We grew at 6.5%. That difference of 3.5% compounded gives you this big difference that they are today 5 times our size in per capita incomes. So, and this is where Prime Minister's vision of making us into a Viksit Bharat or a high-income economy comes into play, which is that we also must become that. And for doing that, we have to raise our rate of growth.
Correct.
From the 6, we should not be satisfied, complacent with 6%.
Correct.
We have to strive for 8, 8.5, 9, 10%. And I strongly believe that given our talent, given our skills, given our demographic structure, median age of only 27, one of the youngest countries in the world, and given our traditions and education, and most importantly, given our private entrepreneurs,
Yes.
we can surely do more than 8, 8.5, 9%. And if we do that, we will catch up with China sooner rather than later, because they having come to where they are, they're going to experience the advanced economy growth rates of 2, 3, 4%. Although they are trying very hard to break that. But nonetheless, if we get our conditions at growth at 8.5, 9%, we will catch up with them, and we will be, really sort of chasing them by the time we come to 2050.
So maybe China has come to the middle income country trap. I mean, the growth trap that it is now at around 4%, 4.5, 3.5 to 4.5%. So it's not progressing at what it was progressing 1 or 2 or 3 decades earlier. India, sir, coming back to India, what we are seeing, I mean, massive support spurred by the government in the, infrastructure, in the capital formation. We are seeing roads, we are seeing airports, we are seeing so many spheres in which government is pushing good amount of money, and we can see the results. Many places where you go, you do not find the type of infrastructure that India is coming up with in many other places right now. We are building expressways, we are building roads, 4 lanes, 6 lanes, you name it, it is. We are connected both in terms of internet, we are connected in terms of roads, connecting in terms of airways. Unfortunately, the private capital, what we had expected, is not coming to that extent. Sir, how do you expect? Government is pushing maximum, but the private also has to give, so that realize what you are telling, or the Prime Minister vision of Viksit Bharat and 8-9% growth. How do you look at it, sir?
No, it's a great observation, Jane, great observation, and the government is trying all its best.
Yes.
And to try and what is called the crowd in the private sector. By ramping up.
But crowd in, not crowd out.
Crowd in. And, so that is the objective,
Yes,
that's the goal.
absolutely.
And therefore public capex
Yes.
has gone beyond 3% of GDP
Yes,
for the first
absolutely.
time in India's history.
Absolutely.
It's never done that. And as a result of that, you see, as you talked about, massive infrastructure growth in all aspects of our life, including universal access to electricity and so on. So my own understanding of the matter is that twofold. One, I think that the pace at which we are removing our compliance and regulatory burden, of which the Prime Minister talked about from the ramparts of the Red Fort. On 15th August's speech, he said that there are 62,000 compliance and regulatory regulations, compliance and license regulations, and we have to remove them. The speed at which we are doing that is not fast enough. Second, in that, the same part of that is that the state governments are not pulling their weight on this regard. The central government has made 1,200 laws. They have removed them, because they were, sort of irrelevant laws. They've decriminalized many offences under the Income Tax Act, etc. But the same thing is not happening at the states in terms of their licensing and their regulatory requirements. Therefore, states have to actually, become, have to take part in it. So that's the second part of the thing. Is the third part of it is that I think the private sector is still waiting for our demand to rise faster than what it is. Now, therefore, the GST cut by the government, which is spurred demand, and therefore this festival was much better for everybody. And I hope that this will continue, because you see, after all, private sector will invest in expanding the capacity when it shows that its demand is going to be there. So therefore, that hopefully that domestic demand will rise, and there lies the question of generating employment.
Correct.
Right? Because demand will ultimately rise if employment rises. Because those, even if you give people all the subsidies in the world, free food and free housing and free whatever, that doesn't lead to the rise in demand. Because the man's demand will rise when he knows that I have money in my pocket and that this money will continue to come in the pocket. What economists call the permanent income hypothesis. Right? And that is where the employment generation has got to become the key in every state of the country. And it's the state governments who should be doing that. And once that happens, I'm sure the private sector will come forth. One last point, which is that government and the private sector, if they work together for improving our share in the world markets, by increasing our exports, of labor-intensive products, then again the demand will rise because incomes will be generated, and then the private sector will come.
I'll talk to you about the labor-intensive export sector next. But you talked of employment. Now, MSME sector in India is one of the biggest sectors which provides labor, which provides employment. There, we feel that due to the global headwinds, both and the big capital, both domestic as well as here, they are having issues. They are having problems. How do you look at it? What do you feel should be done by the state government, central government to take care of the MSME sector? Or, like in most of the places, they will just fall by the wayside?
Well, it's too large to fall by the wayside. 35% of our exports come from the small and medium sector. The informal sector employs 90% of our labor, including agriculture there.
Correct.
So it's again huge. And but what's happened in the last 10 years or so is that the small and medium sector suffered from two shocks. One was the demonetization shock.
Yes.
And the second was the COVID shock.
Yes.
The big one. And the COVID shock was so huge.
Should I add the GST shock also to that, the compliance shock?
GST was not a shock.
Okay.
Because GST, in some sense, they were paying the tax earlier already also. It isn't just...
Or they were not paying the tax.
Or they were not paying the tax. So maybe that is... So therefore, it could be a shock.
Yes.
But that is something that had to be done.
Yeah, absolutely.
They all had to come into the compliance sector. So that maybe as they get used to the GST and accept it completely.
Correct.
Now with the lower rates and simplified rates, only two rates, So therefore, then the small and medium enterprises will pick up on what they have left off and start progressing again. And along with that, the government has made so many other programs, for collateral-free loans, for up to 5 crores, so on. So many such things have come. Mudra.
That is, a big amount of loan is being given to the...
Through all that, I think, and the GST, the second part that I was going to say was that the small and medium enterprises, because, of those two shocks, they had what I called a K-shaped recovery.
Yes.
Because they're here like that. Because, this is the large and big sector.
Correct.
That has grown and you can see the growth. But this sector, when it went down,
Correct.
hasn't been able to pick up. So this will be tackled by the state governments working with the small and medium enterprises to say that, look, let's see how you will increase in scale and how you will increase in size and diversity. And that is where the government's promotional role and not the regulatory role should become more important. And once they do, then the small and medium enterprises will take off. So we are still waiting for that takeoff to happen post the COVID shock. And let's hope that this will...
No, as you rightly said, sir, the medium and the small sector are too big in a way. I mean, too diverse and too much employ a large number of people. So they cannot be wished away. But, I mean, and they have... The good thing is that from the general production, they are coming into the niche production.
Yes.
They are specializing. Gem and jewelry and say garments and all. I can now see with my also experience in the government and personally seeing that they are doing many such things which are very niche and that has got a global market. Plus, the most important thing, through platforms on the internet, they are able to sell their product globally.
Yeah.
And locally, I mean, it's being very well
You
done.
made such a big important, because I know that there is something called the Digital Empowerment Foundation, DEF,
Yes.
Which is connected now more than 10,000 artisans
Correct.
to the global market.
Correct.
Through the internet and through the platforms, etc. So now this is taking time, but once this happens, the small and medium enterprises will find the global market at their doorstep. And that is what they will take the advantage of, which wasn't there earlier. They were only producing for the local. And again, this point that you made is so important that, they are, by going niche, they are going up market.
Yes.
In every sector they are. They're not producing the run-of-the-mill cloth.
Exactly.
No, they're producing the more expensive sarees, the more expensive gems and jewelry, the more expensive, leather products. And that will find a market, and that again will find a better niche in the global market.
Yes.
So in short, what I'm saying is, yes, they have suffered because of the shocks, and they took time because they didn't have the ability to get over it as soon as they can, because they don't have large departments. But having gotten over it now, I think the time you will see that there is a spurt in the small and medium enterprise growth, and that will then also contribute to India's economy growing at more than...
Sir, another thing that the government of India has done, particularly spearheaded, I would know, by our Prime Minister Modi ji himself, was the GEM initiative.
Yeah.
Of the tender being, it's now unlike no company are doing independently. It's on the GEM platform it's done. And that gives an opportunity for the small and medium entrepreneurs also to compete along with the big players in the field. And that has proved, sir, highly successful.
And the GEM portal is made transparency centerpiece. So therefore there can be no hanky-panky. And everybody, state government, ministries, public sector units are expected to procure through the GEM.
Correct.
And that has made the small and medium enterprises come at the same level.
Yes.
The large enterprise. Because now they can, they are equal. And therefore they don't have to depend on any sort of, side activities to get the orders.
Correct.
So I think GEM initiatives are very big.
This has brought transparency, this has brought cost effectiveness, and this has brought new players into production.
Absolutely.
Which is absolutely remarkable for a country. And such a big platform has been provided.
So number of these platforms and initiatives which have taken place have been in the first 5 years, 6 years. And as they gather steam and as they become, to come together, they will then generate the momentum for the small and medium enterprises.
Do you see the role of AI in this particular field, or that pushing these things up?
Yes, I think so. But I am again it'll depend entirely on how we handle it. Because, the AI has come, we can't deny it, we can't sort of push it away. But whether or not we will be working. Now here, for example, there's quite an important requirement for the research institutes or top institutes like IITs to work with the small and medium enterprises. And that bridge has to be created so that they can give to the AI, and for example, as I talked about the Digital Empowerment Foundation, they are into digital. Next step they will take is AI. But you need a lot more of those sorts of activities for SMEs to benefit from AI and improve their productivity, their quality, their whole access, reach to the global market, etc. But there again, the government's initiative of the Startup India is very important. And these Startup India people who are now, they interact with the SMEs, they are grown from there, and that again, I think, will help. And the Prime Minister actually led the way by taking 2 meetings of what he called the champions of change. And they were all small and medium enterprises. So therefore, when that grows, that will also happen. So
your message to the small and medium industries would be to take advantage of digital platforms, digital empowerment, and the new schemes what the government of India and the state governments are coming forward with.
Absolutely, yes. And also fintech.
Yes.
Take advantage of the fintech so that they can get their loans, not by having to fill hundreds of forms and getting, sort of all sorts of headaches. But now fintech, I'm told, can give you a loan in less than an hour, so you can go there and they connect. So the small and medium enterprises should not be scared of fintech. They should see it as a friend, and
correct, sir.
And when that happens, and as it is happening, I think this will gather momentum and they will grow.
Fintech, they have to be somewhat wary of the scams. That is one thing what they have to.
Yeah, that is so, but I was talking fintech more about the about the credit side.
Yes.
And there are companies now which are giving you credit, at pretty much at the flick of a button, and the small and medium enterprises.
And just like in case of product manufacture, there is a platform. I was going through a site, Policy Bazaar. So it's giving the various insurance site at one place. So one can compare and contrast.
That's right.
Sir, you recently came up with the book, Everything All at Once. You have talked of India and 6 simultaneous global transitions. Are they going to help us, or are they going to impede us, or are they going to, be a sort of challenge before us?
And very well put, actually, you said. But all of them are a challenge to us. And combined, they become a formidable challenge. But we must also believe that every challenge is an opportunity.
Correct.
And therefore we have to make use of that challenge by addressing that challenge in the right way, in the right possible way. Now, I just give you an example, which is that climate change. It's a big challenge, and people saying 20-year window only is left and 1 point. Now, that challenge now requires that we go beyond mitigation and adaptation to actually carbon removal from the environment, and reducing what is called, carbon reversal. Yes. Now there is and yesterday the Honorable Prime Minister was in Coimbatore talking about this natural farming. Natural farming is a way of farming, and Acharya Devbrat, whom is a great,
our governor in Gujarat,
a great
propagator
for it, that has now produced evidence that if you practice that increases the carbon content of the soil.
Correct.
So that can become, therefore, the largest carbon sequestration program in the world if we do this at scale. Now imagine that India becomes a natural farming economy, and as a result of which the carbon, and by the way, we need to increase that carbon because our carbon content has become absolutely abysmal. Soil scientists say that our soil is in the ICU. So if we improve that, then we can help put the carbon back. Now this is addressing the climate challenge in the right way. If we do this, it becomes an opportunity. Our farmers will get the carbon credit. Our country can earn the carbon credit.
Yes.
Right? And therefore, our health costs will decline. Our water use in agriculture will decline. So the bottom line in this book, which by the way, this was launched very kindly by Honorable Mohan Bhagwat ji. The bottom line is that we have to do what is called a Sagar Manthan again, an intellectual Sagar Manthan, so that we come up with alternate ways of doing things and alternate ways of making policy and alternate ways of bringing all the stakeholders together. So that Sagar Manthan, which was done by our, in our traditional past, etc. So as you know, this produces both some amount of poison but also Lakshmi.
Yes.
But there are people who will take care of that poison, and then the Lakshmi is what we are looking for and become prosperous. So that's what the central message of the book is, that business as usual will not do.
Yeah.
We have to think differently and we have to act differently.
We have challenges, but we have to utilize those challenges, opportunities for growth, for sustenance, and for future prosperity.
And prosperity. And to do it in a manner that we achieve our economic prosperity, ecological security, and our health well-being. So, and that can be done. And that's the central message.
Thank you, sir. I'll take you to something very proximate with which very large number of stakeholders would be interested in knowing. Till the present American regime, the present American government was not there. There was smooth, relatively, I should say, in the global trade, global commerce and all. After that, the global headwinds, of course, that time also there was some sort of anti-globalization, people speaking against globalization, that some people have been left behind in the Western world. A large number of things have been Bangalorized, was the new word, Bangalored, that has gone to Bangalore and it's coming from offshored, which Bangalore had become a synonym for offshoring. So the present regime under Trump has sort of stopped, or rather decelerated not only globalization, but has put massive barriers for the trade and commerce with the new tariff regime. It said that after the Smoot-Hawley regime, after that in the late 1920s, which was a precursor to the Great Depression in USA, this is the type of thing that USA has done. How do you look at India's challenges? How will Indian exports face this challenge?
Now, it's a huge problem. And after a very, very long time, in the last 5 years, the growth of global trade has become slower than the growth of global GDP.
Oh, that's the news.
Yes, and therefore, our global trade growing slowly means that our export challenges are much bigger, and which is why I talked about increasing the share in the global market.
Yes.
Because so far India has not been able to do that. We have stagnated, but it's not going to be easy. And the reshoring or nearshoring or onshoring, all of that would mean that the world is becoming a more protectionist place than what it was earlier. And but my own thought, JN, on this is that India need not be scared of this. And two or three reasons for it. One, I think that Mr. Trump will realize sooner than later that India is too important for the US to completely ignore it or act against it. And so therefore we will reach a fairly good trade agreement, which will bring down these tariffs, and the access to the US market will come back to us in some way. That's the one part.
Correct.
Second is that all that is happening has made our own establishment, our own policymakers far more aware of the need to get into the regional or the bilateral trade agreements, and therefore one was signed with the UK.
Yes.
The Australian one is also coming along, and I believe the EU. So that's also very good news, because so far exports did not receive that kind of policy attention that they deserved, but now they will, because now it's come to that. So that's the second reason. The third reason is that what we export, for example, agro exports, shrimps. There are of course alternate markets for it, and we need to then find those markets and start going there. And again, we were talking earlier about the labor-intensive exports. Gems and jewelry. Yes, the US was a large importer of gems and jewelry, but surely the rising countries of the West Asia, or China for that matter, or Japan, we can find markets there which can replace the US market. So similar and same thing for handicrafts and textiles and upmarket textiles. So I'm not sure that we should be so concerned our concern should be much more that this protectionist tendency and the dismantling of the world trading order, which means that WTO is not effective, that could affect actually a much larger population even in Europe
Correct.
and America. And that might lead to a global recession, which will affect everyone very negatively. And this is why, and I say it here, is that I think it's time now to find some ways of improving our economic ties with China. Because it is the second largest economy in the world. It is growing still at 4 or 5%. It is our next door neighbor. And therefore, that's a market, which we can, if we improve our relationship, which with all the security, safeguards that we need to do, I think we will be able to overcome the challenge posed by rising protectionism in the Western world.
Yeah. So that way, I mean, India, our trade minister is already having advanced dialogues with USA. And to some extent, we may concede, to some extent, we may get access. What do you think are the areas where India will gain and the areas where India will be sort of constrained to concede? Or rather, will have to concede in the broader parameters, in the broader viewpoint?
India will gain, for example, in pharmaceuticals. The US cannot afford to restrict. They've already, I think, given it a...
On certain things they have. So
They have,
but the food products and all, they have already reduced quite a bit. Pharmaceuticals, they have not yet.
have been actually
for generic
have been
things.
actually exempted
Yes.
from this. So therefore, we will gain there. We will gain also, I think, in gems and jewelry.
Correct.
Because that again, the US market requires that. So but in some other cases, for example, our engineering exports, we will probably not be able to achieve that bigger dent. What we will be constrained, they are very insistent on expanding and increasing their agricultural exports to our country, especially corn, and also cashews and other things. But
Soybean is something that they would like to push everywhere.
But that's the, or wheat, for example. But that is where we'll be constrained because of protecting our farmers' interests. But also that brings me back to the fact that it's also therefore time now to work much harder on improving agricultural productivity and agriculture, incomes. Because unless that happens, our farmers cannot remain protected forever and ever. And if they switch to organic farming with highest technology, then they can be producing goods which are in greater demand all over the world, and at lower cost. And that is why the switch to natural farming is now, really the time has come.
So India's agriculture has to, girdle itself and go ahead substantially.
In a very big way, JN. 45% of our workforce is engaged in agriculture. It only produces 18% of the
GDP.
So you can imagine how poor the productivity levels are. And in most areas, if not all, our yields per hectare are a fraction of what they are in the world. And that again cannot be allowed to go on.
Sir, coming back to the macro thing, what you talked earlier, multilateralism has been given a shrift, not only in economy, but in the political geopolitics sphere as well. UN is now just a skeleton of what it was earlier. Nobody goes to UN, either the Ukraine war or US trying to come to Venezuela. UN is just not even a bystander. It's nowhere in the picture. How do you look at it?
Well, I think UN had lost its appeal a very long time ago. Now it's become even clearer. And I think, therefore, this is the time now to strengthen some alternate forums.
Yes.
Whether it is BRICS or it is G20, or it's the SCO. I think those are the places where India should collaborate with the other countries of the South to create a world order where ethics and values and some standard rules will prevail, and the will of the mighty, जिसकी लाठी उसकी भैंस नहीं चलेगी, और इसके लिए हम लोग कर सकते हैं और करना ज़रूरी है. So I think that is the way I think we should be looking for. But finally, one has to say that if anybody is interested in continuing the UN, it has to be reformed. The biggest 6 countries, economies have to be in the Security Council.
Yes, exactly.
You cannot have Europe being overrepresented the way it has been. So that UN reform is pending for a very long time. And again here, if we can persuade our members in the BRICS to push India's case, India and Brazil, and I think that will be the way to go, take it forward. And I think that's
nobody is there from Latin America, nobody is there from African continent. So you cannot ignore such big size of...
And hope to remain relevant.
Yes.
So therefore
India has to be there.
And therefore UN has become irrelevant.
But that apart, if US is not interested, UN cannot move. That's one of the big things over here.
That has to be done.
And the multilateralism, whether we say GATT or WTO or something, has to be brought in. And US also should understand that, it cannot remain isolated for long.
So you will have to wait 3 years.
Yes.
And in the next 3 years, this president is not going to understand that. And it's not much point in trying to make him understand that. So, but let's, we should keep our eye on what is coming ahead, what is in the future, work with them, and create a situation where, the UN reform becomes a possibility, a reality. Because we do need a body on the global level, which will retain order.
Correct.
And I think rather than discover new ones, if the UN can be reformed, so be it. Otherwise, as I said, we have to form our own alternate institutions.
Sir, coming back to our first thing, India, I am highly optimistic of India's growth, and so are you. Would you like to say something more on that? We conclude our discussion after that.
Not very much more, Jan. I think we've covered a lot of ground, but I have to say that one, India must grow at more than 8% to achieve the aspirations of its young population.
Yes.
And to generate the jobs that are required for its young population, because otherwise we'll be in trouble. That's one. And two, that we can grow at 8% if we try and think a little differently. And one of the necessary conditions for India to grow at 8% is for the government to become a promotional machinery rather than a regulatory machinery. And for the government and the private sector to work on the basis of complete trust rather than mistrust, which I'm afraid is what's happening at the moment. So you have to replace trust and positive, forward vision.
And our reforms must continue.
And our reforms must continue, especially in this direction.
Yes. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you so much. Wonderful. Lovely.